Welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another AFL round review. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, more footy to talk about. And joining me today as my co-host, a very special guest. I've probably spent the last 40 minutes just catching up and chatting, especially some of the fantastic stories she had to tell me about finding out she was an All-Australian, joining me all Australian defender. I know she's covering her face. She's so blushing because I have to give her her plaudits. That is Swans defender Brianna Tarrant. BT, it is great to see you. Congratulations on the All Australian. It is great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I get so shy when people say that. I just don't. Not my thing. But thank you. I'm very excited to be back in the podcast seat for the third time now, I believe.
Yep. Interview, and then you did the grand final review a couple of years ago with
That's
great
correct.
Sydney Swans podcaster Chris, who I'm hoping to have on later on in the year. But
Yeah.
again, she is humble upon humble. I absolutely love it, but well earned, as I told her off mic. And again, her story of finding out in the Himalayas was quite fun. We won't regale with that because we need to talk about the footy. So, all right, BT, let's hop right into it. Thoughts on this round eight footy, because we were given a little bit of everything. We were given some great matches. We were given some absolute shit matches. So, just your thoughts on round eight so far.
In my honest opinion, and I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I barely watched a game this week other than the Swans Giants match. But I was pleasantly shocked with just what I saw. Obviously, that Geelong Collingwood game was amazing. Swans
Mhm.
Giants, of course, great. Even West Coast kind of showed a bit of flair and what they're capable of, but yeah, just like shocked in all facets, I guess.
hmm No, I get it. This is one of those. It was either really good or really bad, and I think that's kind of the easiest way to describe this round because you either had a good game that was competitive, had some fire, had some biffo even in some of them, and then there were some games that just, I mean, honestly, were not competitive, and we'll try to go fast on those ones because those are ones you're not always fun to talk about. So let's go at Thursday night footy, and I know a lot of people saw this draw and went. Hmm, because nobody thought this was going to be a competitive, but North Melbourne decides to go not just yet as they scare the living daylights, but the Bombers get the win 65-62 in a great game under, well, not so great game under the lid at Marvel, but hey, Essendon gets it done. But I love seeing a little bit of fight in North Melbourne. I have to admit, no Paul Curtis after the suspension, which again has divided many in the AFL, but Bombers got enough to get it done, but man, did North put a scare into them.
Yeah, no, it was pretty interesting actually. And I reckon I watched probably like that last 20 odd minutes of that game. And actually, it was great, in my opinion. Like, you're just seeing almost like a bit of a changing of the guard, especially at like probably at both of these two teams with, the likes of, is it Cacao from Essendon just being like a new version of Tip and Woody and even with Stringer leaving the club, like guys like that just coming in the first year, stepping up. Obviously, North, you've got obviously Luke Parker's come into the team from our beloved Swans, but just supporting the likes of Sheasel and stuff like that through the midfield and the back line and. It's kind of good when you see that coming together a little bit. But no, I thought it was actually a great game, in
Yeah,
my opinion.
I think Luke Parker was a great pickup again. Hate losing him at the hated losing him at the Swans, but I think he's been a great addition because I think he kind of helps mentor a Davis Uniacke, a Sheasel, a Wardlaw, some of those young, super talented midfielders that they just need a little bit of leadership, which they haven't really had. They've been kind of thrown to the wolves because of the fact they've got Clarko. Yes, Clarko's great, but Clarko's not on the field. There's only so much he can do from the coach's box. So having that experienced head of Luke Parker there, I think will really kind of kickstarted again. Was it the result that they wanted? No. I mean, I think North Melbourne would have loved to be able to stick it to Kane Corns when it came to his Harry Sheezel commenting, which I'd be fascinating because the men get all of this negative energy towards them, sometimes even from former footballers like Kane. So it was kind of nice to see Harry Sheezel have a good game and kind of stick it up Kane Corns a little bit, which I don't mind. I think Kane Corns has become a shock jock AFL broadcaster, a little bit like Stephen A. Smith over here. Sometimes I think he thinks he knows what he's talking about when really I don't think he does. But this is a personal opinion. We will move on to unfortunately Friday night. Um, how to say this? It was crap. I will be bluntly honest. This was a crap game of footy on at least one side. I'll give St. Kilda. They bounced back from an atrocious performance the week before, getting a 61 point win over Fremantle, 94-33. I I, I don't know. I know you said this BT. Were we watching a Sydney competition because Fremantle just did not show up?
Yeah, I mean, like you in like watching snippets of that game as well. I'm also hoping that, Ross Lyon went back into the change rooms at every quarter and at the end of the game saying that that was not their best footy. Like it just like I'm not like it was obviously Marvel Stadium. It's a pretty good deck, well maintained, and just to kind of see that the quality of I guess ball handling wasn't great, especially from two professional start sides that are sort of lifting and trying to get into finals windows consistently. Yeah, it shows one like Fremantle what you can do to Fremantle and to St Kilda that there's a whole nother level for them that they can get to and they can be really, really dangerous.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I agree. I have many a Fremantle fan, and to see their reaction, it's just, I don't know what it was. Like normally Fremantle's a team that you challenge them and they come right back. They give you that counter punch, but they just never did. It was like they holstered it, but they just never threw it. And St. Kilda just continued. Again, was it the greatest footy? Absolutely not. Which unfortunately for a Friday night footy kind of stinks that prime time football and that's what we get served. It kind of stinks, but again, the fixture makers do this a long time before, and not much we can do about it. We move on to Mars Stadium in Ballarat, where Port Adelaide did anybody really show up? Port Adelaide, I'm sorry, but a 90 point smashing as the Western Bulldogs beat Port Adelaide 131-41. And the Bont, yes, the Bont, ladies and gentlemen, is back.
Yeah, that guy is so impressive. I mean, there's so many people and like as someone who lives in Sydney and in New South Wales where it's just dominated by like NRL and everything like that, Bontempelli would be one of the few AFL names other than Buddy Franklin and Isaac Heaney that people in Sydney would actually know.
Mhm,
And and you look at like the performance he put on is obviously why. He's just a phenomenal leader. And to be honest, like I'd kill for like the opportunity to sit down over a cup of coffee with that man because he just like him and Patrick Cripps just put the team on their back sometimes and just yeah, how they do that week in, week out is like so inspiring.
mhm. There's very few players in the competition that you can just see that they flip the switch and it's theirs. Like, and Chloe Malloy on your team is another one that can do that. They can just one switch, and then the game is theirs. They will take over. It is theirs. Patrick Dangerfield's another one I think that can do that. I agree. Isaac Heaney at times can do that. Um, Patrick Cripps can do it. I've seen games from Isaac Rankin and Jordan Dawson over in Adelaide have started to kind of show that a little bit too. So man, was it fun to watch him play and to see Adam Trelaw back. And the Duggies are getting healthy. I know this has been kind of a helter-skelter year because Jamar Oglehagen has just decided, well, I'm just not going to play footy for you guys anymore, which is there's been that drama. But for them, like I got to say it now, right now it's hard to say that Bevo is not coach of the year. because what he's doing with the injury riddled roster that he had, and no Bontempelli the first 5 weeks, no Trelaw for the first 7 weeks, and having to play Joel Frazier and the doctor kid Davidson, who is a doctor and now is playing footy because he played so well. Like these great stories, like as much as I hate saying it, the doggies are fun to watch. They're an entertaining group because they're finding ways to win despite some of the adversity they've had to deal with. So they've been a fun one to watch. I know a few of my Port Adelaide supporters, man, I just cannot get a grip on this team. I really can't. As soon as I think I've got them figured out, they pull performance. They hold my beer moments like this, and it really is frustrating because you've got Butters, you've got Rosie, you've got Horn Francis, you've got some absolute superstars, Georgiades, Jace Burgoyne, some incredible talented players, and you serve up this crap. Like it's very frustrating the Port Adelaide Footy Club right now because I don't know what they are. I don't know if they're a bottom 10 side or if they're a finals side. I don't know because I can't figure it out. They have one game they look absolutely fantastic, and then another game they look like they could barely beat a rec side. So it's very frustrating for me, this Port Adelaide team. Again, doggies did what they needed to do. Ballarat is almost become a fortress for the doggies. It's been fun. It's as soon as I see Ballarat, I almost want to tip doggies no matter who they're playing because they always play really well down at Mars Stadium. So let's jump over to the Adelaide Crows, where we had another similar performance as the Adelaide Crows get a 60-point win over the Carlton Blues 110-50, and the former Swan Jordan Dawson had himself a day out.
Yeah, it's actually quite refreshing to see the Crows do what they've done this season. I'll be honest with you, like the Crows, other than their women's team, is not a team that I watch closely
Mhm.
um, on a weekly basis. They're just kind of, a side that's there, and but to be honest, they've just been there this year. It's been really impressive to see what they do. I'll be honest, I think I mean, not exactly knowing him, but being within the same four walls as Alex Neil-Bullen previously at Melbourne, I can definitely sense and seeing what he did at Melbourne that he's brought that same thing over to Adelaide, and yeah, it's almost not that he can take the full credit for it. He definitely can't, but they just look refreshed.
Mhm. Yep. No, I'm
But yeah,
completely
like
with you.
what yeah, I think Carlton are just producing what, their run of good form, run of bad form, same thing every year kind of thing. I don't know. I can't say too much on them. They're just
Carlton's a
Daniel
little
Orange is struggling again this year. Let's just say
Well,
that.
Carlton's a little bit like Port Adelaide. I don't know what their best is. I just don't know because as soon as I think I've got it figured out, they have that great performance they have great performances, and then they have performances like this one where it's like I don't know. They're another Jekyll. There's so many teams that are Jekyll and Hyde this year. I don't know what is true them this year, and that's frustrating because I see the talent again. Crippa, Walsh, Mackay, Kerno, so many. I mean, on paper, the talent wise on paper, they should be winning games like this. Even on the road, they should be winning games like this, and they don't. I
Yeah,
agree with you. I think Adelaide probably had one of the best trade periods purely because you bring in veteran experience. You bring in Alex Neil-Bullen, you bring Peatling, you bring in some really and Isaac Cummings. All three of those good, solid role players that can play midfield, they can play defense, they can play forward, they can play a little bit of everywhere. They brought depth to a team that last year the depth killed them because of all of their injuries. Rankin goes down, they have no depth. Dawson really wasn't through the central part of the midfield last year. He was really off half back still. They've been able to move him into the center midfield so then you can get that ball movement and his incredible left foot. You can have Cummings off the wing or off the halfback line. Peatling has been able to play in both those positions. Alex Neil-Bullen has been a great small forward. I honestly believe, and Riley Philthorpe comes back and looks like the frickin' Hulk. So this Crows team, literally, I think they finally their off season really kind of boosted what I already thought was going to be a better team this year. I came into the season even before their off season. I knew they would be better this year because they get healthy. They had longer off season, get the surgeries, get everybody ready for preseason. Then you boost it with three really good role players. You get Phil Thorpe back at full strength, like I said, the Hulk now, especially, and then he does the compound fracture in his fingers, and then still plays the next week, which I'm sitting here going, holy crap! Like this guy is impenetrable. I mean, holy crap! So I'm fascinated on this Crows team. They're one of my fancies. They're one of my fancies outside of the Swans that I love watching because they're entertaining as all get out. Because I just don't know what I'm going to get, and it is sometimes fun. They're very offensively. I love Tex Walker. I think the old veteran head with incredible
Maybe he's
kicking
still
skills.
around
Oh yeah,
sometimes. He's been around for as long as I can remember.
yep, yep. I love
So
Tex. I think Tex is so much fun to watch. So
yeah,
ag- again, this Carlton team, I just want them to find their form. Like I think Voss has a great list. They just got to make up their mind what type of footy team they want to be because if contested ball doesn't go for them, sometimes it's a long day because a lot of their backs are forward thinking. Sod is forward thinking. Mitch McGovern is forward thinking. They've got Wiedering, who's one of the best fullbacks in the entire. Sam Taylor, and Barras are three of the best fullbacks in the entire league. Like they are so much fun to watch because they always are in good position. But other than that, they really have a lot of offensive defenders, and sometimes that can hurt them. So,
oh, absolutely.
so
I think as well, like I've just got the fixture up here. Aside from Melbourne, the three teams that travelled into state this week were Fremantle, Port Adelaide, and Carlton, who all got smashed
mhm,
this week. Now, as someone who has to travel, every second week for a game, it is super important your preparation for those interstate games, especially going over to Perth. Having
mhm,
to travel for us, it's in Sydney 5 hours to get over to Perth. For Melbourne, it's about three and a half. To do those travels, the preparation and just being ready as a whole from the moment you step off that plane is so crucial. And look, I can't say that that's the answer, but every team that got smashed this week, aside from Melbourne, who smashed West Coast, was a team that travelled into state this week.
mhm,
So, like, yeah, travelling pains for footy clubs, and you'll see it in lots of sports. If you guys aren't stepping off that plane, knowing you've got a game of football the next day or in the next 2 days, you are in serious trouble.
mhm. No, I completely understand. I agree with that. And even though Adelaide isn't a long trip, it's not a massively long
Half
trip.
an hour from Melbourne.
It's not it really isn't isn't an easy trip. Again, the Adelaide Oval, especially when the Crows are up and about, can be a very difficult place to play. But hey, that was tough for the Carlton faithful because they were starting to get belief, and then it's kind of brought back down a little bit. So again, they're going to be a fascinating watch. Let's go to it. Game of the round. There is no argument. Nobody will argue this as the Cats survive a scare and knock off the Collingwood Magpies 90-87. And I got to say this, congratulations to Jack Crisp. Congratulations, sir, because
Oh
what
yeah.
you just did is incredible. I mean, I didn't think many people would think Jimmy Stein's record would be broken for most consecutive games. He did it. Congratulations to you, Jack Crisp. Unfortunately, the way the game ended was probably not the greatest for Jack Crisp, but I want to say this was incredible. This is Geelong for you. And I said it in the preview. The Cats are just a team. I will never count them out as long as Chris Scott is in the coach's box. I just can't because he finds ways to do things that you just don't think is possible. The Magpies were in scintillating form, as I would say. I've said this a few times. The sun was jealous of how hot Collingwood was at that time. That's how good Collingwood was. The Cats to pull this off, and at the MCG, was incredible. And again, Paddy Dangerfield, they found his niche. Can they keep him healthy? That'll be the question on this. Bailey Smith, been fantastic pickup for the Cats. I think they really needed that midfield star, and he's come in and done that. Their defense did what they needed to do. It's fantastic to see this. The Pies were just as scintillating, just fell short. Jack Crisp with a chance to win it after the siren, which was incredible that he even had the shot to do it. And just he tried to kick it a little bit too hard, splayed off the side of the boot for a behind. They fall by three. What an incredible game of footy. You cannot deny one of the games of the season.
I think it probably very easily will come down to one of the games of the season, mainly because of just the rivalry these two teams have. Um, yeah, I remember reading or listening to a video earlier this year that Chris Scott is one of the hardest coaches or to coach against because he just has different ways to change things up, and it's honestly a credit to him and his flexibility and obviously like the fact that the team just trust him to change something up and just get to work. Obviously, Patrick Dangerfield still acting like he's, winning Brownlows left, right, and center. And I mean, yeah, like Collingwood as well came back really well. I think, is Jack Crisp's records similar to Buddy's will never be broken? I could honestly say that's probably very likely. Like, who's going to kick 1,000 goals soon? There's no one within 200 goals of Buddy's record
Mhm.
that's currently playing football, and I don't think there's anyone really close to Jack Crisp's these days. So it's freaky
Yeah.
to be able to get yourself up week in, week out for his days at Brisbane through to his days at Collingwood and just be in form for that long is obviously a man who's wanting to play his career on his terms.
No, and I think it just and I'll kind of I'll switch it here just a little bit to you because for the longest time you were one of the few on the Sydney Swans that had played every single game, and this year you had a bye round. And as a player, I mean, you have that the grind, even though your season isn't as long as the men's. Again, we're hoping that that changes very soon. But the grind, I mean, you guys, it is a grind every week to get up and to play every single week. And he's done it for over 10 years. What an incredible performance. I mean, just the time that you've had, how difficult is it every day to get up knowing you've got another round of footy again and again and again?
Oh, I mean, it's difficult, and to be honest, from day one of preseason through to the last round of the season, a lot of the time you're waking up sore. That's just and you probably, I'm feeling pretty good right now, like, but I'm like, oh my God, preseason starts next week. Here we go again.
Hmm.
I can't wait for the weekly massages because that's going to help slightly. But sometimes it's just head down, bum up, just get it done because I have no doubt in Jack Crisp's mind is that this career, one, you're going to get one shot at it, pardon me. Um, and it's now, and it doesn't last long. So, I think, on average, I think the average career length for an AFLW player is about 3, 4 seasons, and for the men, it's about 5 or 6. So
Hmm.
that's 6 years in a professional space where you prepare for over a decade of your youth to get ready for. So for him, and even like for myself, a lot of that's like, no, I want to work within these four walls for as long as I can physically get my body to do so, and while I still love it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to be in pain, but that's just the reality of it. Like, this is my job. So, like, other people are probably more mentally exhausted, whereas for us, it's a physical and mental exhaustion. But that's just what we do for a living. And we're pretty damn lucky to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, no, 100% on that. And again, it's I, just the incredible ability to be healthy, to get up and to continue to do that. I know over here there's a baseball record. I'm not sure how much you pay attention to records over here, but Cal Ripken Jr. played in over 3,000 games consecutively and broke the record, and it was celebrated everywhere here. So I'm hoping that Jack Crisp gets some recognition and is celebrated for what he's done because you don't do that very often. You very rarely do you get a player to do what he's doing, especially in a contact sport. Baseball, not as much contact, but it's just the fact that they play 62 games every season. That's why it was such this incredible record for Cal Ripken Jr. over here. But for Jack, it's just the fact that a contact sport doesn't get hurt bad enough that he continues to play every single game. Again, huge shout out to him. I will say this, I loved what his teammates did. Despite falling because of the missed kick, they got around him. They gave him some love. I absolutely love that. I gotta give the Collingwood Magpies some credit. And I don't usually like doing that sometimes because sometimes they annoy the crap out of me. I got to give their team a huge kudos on that for them to go to Jack after the miss and to give him some love because he did everything he possibly could. I mean, the mark was incredible. They had a chance, just fell a little bit short. Again, Collingwood lost no admirers. I don't think people are going to go, well, now they're not flag, they're still flag contenders. They're still there. They're still a good bloody damn footy team, and they got beat by just as good a footy team. Let's jump out to Optus Stadium, where not so good footy team played a team I'm still not 100% sure about, as the Melbourne Demons get a win by 32, 108-76. Again, Melbourne is another one, a little bit like Port Adelaide, a little bit like Carlton, a little bit even like Sydney. I'm not 100% sure what's their best because I still haven't 100% seen it. This is an Eagles team. They're still developing. They're still growing. I agree with what you said earlier. There are green shoots. Well, we'll have to see how it goes. Again, I feel horrible for Minnie because he's in a no-win situation because if he wins games of footy, well, you got lucky. They took you off. They took you lightly. And if you lose, well, you're supposed to lose because your West Coast team is crap. I mean, that's just the honest to God way to look at it. Simon Goodwin, he's found a switch on this Melbourne team. Can it keep going? And now I'm even hearing rumors Clayton Oliver may be out of this Melbourne Demon side after this season because just man, everything has just not gone right this season. They get the win, but again, I don't know. This D's team just another enigma in a season of enigmas in the AFL.
Yeah, look, West Coast is one, and it actually might have been a Kane Corns interview that he I watched today, and it was about, you can talk about Harley Reid not defending and doing this sort of stuff, but he's taking the tag every single week.
Hmm.
And, he's being asked to step up, everything like this. And then his teammates around him are just watching it, not wanting to take the step up to help. Um, yeah, I don't know, they've just been in this same sort of cycle year in, year out. There's not too much you can kind of say to them other than
Hmm.
some people just need to look at Harley Reid and why Harley Reid is recognised for the player he is,
Hmm.
and maybe take a little bit of that with them in their stride. Melbourne, on the other hand, I think that obviously maybe last year you had Track out for a stint there. Clary was out for a stint there. So
Hmm.
I feel like Melbourne really relies on the consistency of game time of their key midfielders, aside from Max Gawn, to play good football. It's almost like their forwards just don't recognize the ball if someone else is putting it inside their inside 50 if it's not for
Hmm.
them. I have loved what Jake Bowie has done off halfback.
Hmm.
Um, it has been so fascinating to see him grow. Obviously, I think I was in like maybe my second season at Melbourne when he got drafted, or third season. And just to see him being recognised as someone who can really be super dynamic, like Christian Salem off their halfback, is really nice to see because he does work hard and he deserves that recognition. But yeah, I don't know. I think for Melbourne, it's about getting used to potentially not seeing those two in the midfield on a regular basis because, yeah, I mean, teams change. Will Clayton Oliver be out at the end of the year? Who knows? A lot of people like to make up rumours about
Hmm.
those midfielders in at the D's. So who knows what happens there? Obviously, they'd pointed fingers at Track going to Collingwood last year and even this year, and it's just like
Hmm.
I don't like why are we saying this? Let them play some footy. If they want to go, they'll go. Why do we have to force them there? It's like, why did we force Daisy Pearce into retirement? Why did we force Adam Goods into retirement? Why do we need to make these comments. I know it adds drama, but it's obviously affecting this team because, yeah, and it's affecting the players too.
Mhm.
Because before what Clayton Oliver injured himself 2 odd years ago, he was one of the best midfielders the league had. And then as soon as he injured himself, one little thing happened at training, and everyone thought that he was just a selfish player. And that is, in fact, not him at all. He was one of the most genuine players at Melbourne that I spoke to at
Mhm.
that club. He is genuinely cares, genuinely asks questions, and is a Melbourne person, in my
Mhm.
opinion. So, yeah, it's just about like they obviously need to look for other people, and that forward line just needs to adapt a bit more, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%. I've heard it discussed a few times. The difference between how Australians handle uh, the end of a career versus Americans. And it is fascinating because I have seen there is a difference. Like with Melbourne, it's kind of like we want to get rid of them. Go, just get out of here. We're done with you. Like, but with Americans, it's this weird, like, don't go, please stay here. We don't want you to go. Like, it really is this complete opposite of how they handle it. Or when they go, everybody's happy for them. Like, if a superstar leaves the team because they're at the end of their career, they want to win a championship. Most American fans, it seems like they're like, go win a title. We'll cheer for you despite you not being with us. Go win a title. Go kick some butt. Where with Australians, it's kind of like if you get to a point where you're not serviceable, they just don't want you around. They don't want you going to another team. They want you with them, and that's it. And it's almost like you kind of lose the connection between the player and the club a little bit because of that thought process of if you're not going to win it here, we don't care. Where and maybe it's because the league is so much bigger because there's I mean in several of our competitions there's 30 teams, so it's a lot bigger than the 18 teams down in the AFL. Like there's almost this wish sometimes that when they do go, we want you to win. We want you to have success because we want to thank you for what you've done here. It isn't the same, and it is really the Tom Poppy syndrome. Really, I think is very noticeable sometimes, especially in Australian media. That, and I know Lee Matthews has said in a couple of podcasts. He goes, "How we treat some of our greats at the end of their careers is very odd because we want them to be done. We're talking about them retiring. We're not going stay one more year, please, please continue to play footy. Like you look at guys like Buddy." He finishes his career in almost inauspicious because he doesn't announce it. He just walks and he's done. He's retired. And then you look at guys nowadays that are close to the end. You have Steel Side Bottom at Collingwood. You have Scott Pendlebury. People are now talking, can they continue to play together? Can they could like I love that. I love seeing these veterans that are having renaissance. Paddy Dangerfield is starting to kind of find a renaissance with himself, maybe up a little up forward. You look at guys I hate it, but the way the Swans handled Luke Parker was tough because I didn't want him to go. I loved what he was doing, but I understood he wanted to play more midfield time. And if you look at Warner, Heaney, Rowbottom, Goulden, all the talents they had, they couldn't keep them all. So the best part is, and I loved some of this, many of the Swans fans, they're like, go, Luke, go to North, enjoy your time. It's going to suck you're not here, but do your best. And I kind of loved that many Swans fans wished Luke good luck over there. So I agree with you that I just really hope we don't have the tall poppy syndrome with Clary and Christian. But
Yeah.
the possibility is there that they may need to move them just to to kind of boost the rebuild. And I know D's fans are like, you may have to think about it because there is some really good young talent on this team, as we saw this week. You've got Disco Turner and some of the youngsters that are coming in. They're playing very well, and you want that. And maybe it may take a moving a Clary Oliver or moving a Christian Petrarca to get assets, to get younger talent in to boost again rebuild. I'm sorry, but that may be what you need to do. So
Yeah.
I'm going to do something really interesting here. I'm going to save the game that you said you watched the most of for last because I know it's always fun. Because the next two games after it really are kind of followed the same timeline. One team good, one team bad. Hawthorn smashes Richmond 109-44. But I think the bigger shocker is the last one, as Brisbane smashed the Gold Coast Suns by 17, which that game really kind of it was 30, and Gold Coast kind of scored a few goals in garbage time. Brisbane beat the Gold Coast Suns 66-49. The reason that I want to do that is because I mean Hawthorn with the 100-year celebration was fantastic. Seeing all the premierships, all of the past players, all the past coaches there. Richmond again, they're going through this weird growth spurt that they're going to deal with performances like this. They just don't play well. But the Brisbane Gold Coast game was talked about as the game of the round. This was the one I got up. I wanted to watch this. I wanted to. When I watched this game, I was thoroughly disappointed because the Gold Coast team that thoroughly smashed the Swans the week before didn't ever really show its face. Like they continued to hide in the dark because this Brisbane team went and the Q clash was over. Frustrating.
Yeah, look, I think that game was probably one of those little. I think Gold Coast are definitely on that upwards
I agree.
trajectory. They're seen as a team now that is genuinely in competition, like in competition for the finals, especially as we're kind of getting out of the start of the season. They were looked at, oh yeah, they're in finals contention at the start of last year too, but they're playing a bit more consistent footy now as we're getting on to, round 8, round 9. So they're still playing consistent footy. Now that is still with obviously the history that they've had. They had their lapses. Now, this was obviously, from what I can see, potentially one of their lapses
Hmm.
that they've had. Now, obviously, what they're in their second year with their coach now. I my best guess and my hopes for Gold Coast is that they will return back to their best form next week. That is something that they're not going to stand for. Q clashes, Sydney derbies, all that sort of stuff. They come with so much heat, and it's like almost not even AFL football sometimes. You're combining AFL football with boxing in some of these games sometimes. Like it's just even in the women's space, like it's just transferred, and you almost like can't even put a bet on which team's going to win with those because it's just different.
Hmm. No.
So yeah, look, I'm hoping that they can return back to some good footy because it's been nice and refreshing to see a team like Gold Coast do well.
Hmm. No, I'm 100% with you. Just Gold Coast, just they kind of they got buried early and just never really could recover. I mean, you got to admit, they had tagging rules that kind of took Raul out of the game. Tuke Miller still had his usual. He finds a way to get stuff done. The Tuke Miller Dane Zarko conversation before that was always fun and had a couple of little moments where the two were in the same vicinity, which you were waiting for fireworks when it came to it. But I mean, just the easiest way to say it is Brisbane fired the shot and Gold Coast just never really did anything. And again, the score is a little bit misleading because Brisbane gets a couple of garbage time goals. So, but man, and Hawthorn Richmond again. I'm gonna chalk that up to Richmond as a young side. They're getting there. But let's go to it. Let's go to the one that you said you sat down, you watched it. I'm interested in your take on this because you've kind of said it, the Sydney Derby. I'm not going to call it the Battle of the Bridge because, as I'm told, there is no bridge between the two teams, and I keep trying to say
No.
that. Stop calling it the
Oh,
Battle of the
kind of,
Bridge.
kind of is. When you like, if you put it on a map, you've got Swans HQ, which is on in the eastern suburbs of Sydney,
Mhm.
and then a long way down, you've got the harbour, and it extends right way down into like Western Sydney. And Homebush, where the Giants' home ground is situated, is just slightly on the other side of the river. So it kind of a bridge, but like on the other side of the harbour, but not really. One's east
I
and one's west, and it's like a long way
Yeah, so
different.
I just call it the Sydney Derby, and a cracking game of footy for me personally. It was a fun watch. It was at a decent time at 10:10 on a Saturday night into Sunday morning for me, which I appreciate, not having to get up at 2 in the morning to watch the game. So as the Swans get a 14-point win, 87-73, but the Biffo, man, did these two teams do not like each other, and it was clear because there were several spot fires. I know my wife even looked at me and she goes, "Do they always do this?" When we were watching. because so
Plays
many
the orange.
times
Yeah.
the melees, it was very fascinating. There was a ton of emotion into this because both teams came into this game needing a win. It was a fascinating one, and the Swans find a way to get it done.
Yeah, and the commentator said it. It is how you settle your team down through those spot fires that will ultimately see you get over the top. It was, honestly, I find those sorts of games where there is a bit of tension and stuff, again, like a bit refreshing. I think football these days is sort of going down that path of clean skills, lots of running, less fighting, and stuff like that. Mainly because obviously, like, that sort of stuff gets you suspensions these days. Obviously,
Mhm.
the league has the players' welfare and well-being in mind. However, you just can't stop a Sydney Derby or a Q clash or anything like that because it's just sorry, you can't. I'm sorry, you can't. But no, it was great to see. And you could see the team that handled it better on the day won. And both teams threw their punches physically and literally, or literally and, in the scores of the games. I think we saw a bit more Sydney style. Like the Swans showed their feather or their wings
Mhm.
this week.
Agreed.
It looked a lot more like Sydney footy. I mean, what does the Swans style of football look like under Dean Cox? Maybe, like, we don't know. Was that what it will look like in the future? I kind of hope so. It was quite entertaining. I liked it.
Yep, I agree. Well, I will say this, and a couple people have mentioned it, and I agree with it. I think Chad Warner is much more free now that he signed his 2 year extension. Like you can see literally see a difference in his style of play from the first few weeks before he signed it, and in the last 2 rounds against Gold Coast last week and against GWS this week, he looks freer. He looks much more powerful. He's much more going, I'm Chad Warner. You're not tackling me. Like it's been so much fun to see him take over. And Isaac Heaney showing why he's just this mythical creature at times because going up for marks, just his incredible speed. He's so much fun to watch, and I know, especially for the females watching the game, that he's not bad to look at either. So I'm fairly certain on that. So, but I mean. This was a fun game. This was a fun game to watch. Again, the spot fires were fun. I love Joel Hamling kind of really getting into some like Sam Taylor. Like I will give my plaudits.
My favorite part, in my honest opinion,
Yep.
just Joel Hamling. Enough
Yep.
said.
Yep.
Like
Him,
him,
him and Aaron
I,
Francis did fantastic taking away Taylor and Buckley from their
exactly.
intercepting
Like,
position. Those two changed the game because they took the two of their best intercepting defenders and neutralized them. And then to add on to it, Francis and Hamling both kicked goals. I know Hamling was fun because he hit the post
oh my
twice,
God.
and the fact that he had never kicked a goal in an AFL game before and was a
97.
premiership player too, which I thought was even more fascinating. But he gets the goal late and then had the fresh airy after Buckley decided to elbow him in the back of the head that nobody seems to be talking about. Um, and I won't get after. I know Sydney Swan's Instagram and Twitter were all a tizzy over the free kick count and everything like that. And again, I've said it numerous times, the free kick count doesn't have to be 50-50, so people really got to stop using that. But there were some egregious calls, and I'm not an AFL referee basher. Again, I've refereed games up here. It's not fun because it's not easy. But man, the Isaac Heaney one where he gets a 50
Hmm.
high that they missed is it's inexcusable. I mean, I get why Heaney's pissed. He gets hit around the neck, then gets dinged for holding the ball, and then gives up a 50 to give up a goal. I'm like, come on, that's a triple clanger. A missed call, a bad holding the ball call because he had no prior opportunity, and then gives a 50. Come on.
Yeah. Look,
I-
to be
Go ahead.
fair, I'm glad that they paid the one for Rampy's tackle. Obviously, there was consistency.
I agree.
Um, Look, I don't know if you know, but I used to umpire
Hmm.
um, 10 years ago in like under 12s. And look, I know that there's 4 umpires. I know they've said it doesn't work, but the reality is the AFL is probably the hardest sport to umpire.
I agree.
It is, there's just the tiniest of differences can either be a free kick or not, or be a suspension.
Hmm.
Like it's just, it's so minute, the differences. And the reality is, like, we saw it on like on the TV, but you just like the umpires just probably didn't see it.
Hmm. No, and I
Like,
understand, and I understand, and that's why I tell a lot of people on the podcast, I
yeah.
don't bash umpires
Yep.
because again, they're running, we're not. We have the slow motion cameras. They don't. They have to make split second decisions like that, and they have to make up their mind. Most of the time, they're actually right. Like if you really look at it, they are most of the time right. They're usually at least 90% right most of the time. And so I get it. I really do. But it is there are some times that they miss ones that you're just like, come on,
Oh,
come
for
on.
sure.
And there are ones where the umpire, you literally see the umpire is 3 meters from the play and still misses it. Like that's a little egregious for me. So, and then I want to do this really, really quickly before we move on. As a defender yourself, I want to put you in this situation. The Lewis Melican hit on Toby Bedford, and again, I hope Toby Bedford is okay. I know he had blurred vision. It sucks that that happens, but as a defender, how shit is it when you're in Melican situation because you know you've got a quick forward, probably going to get to the ball, but you have to contest the contest. You can't not go in. So I feel for Lewis Melican. He's probably going to get 3 weeks for the strike, but I feel bad for him because he did everything he probably could do. He just wasn't quick enough.
Yeah, and I mean, look, knowing like not being best friends with Lewis Melican and like not, I don't talk to him on a weekly basis, but
Hmm.
knowing enough of him personally, I know that he did not mean that. But that's not what the tribunal's looking for. Oh, he's a good
It's
guy.
not
Blah, blah.
about intent, and
It's not
that's the
about when
one
you meant
thing.
it or not. But knowing him as a person, like he'll feel like shit.
Oh yeah. Well, I you could see it
Yeah,
after it happened. Like he
yeah,
puts his hands up and he's like standing next to you could tell it and he bounced back from it. Actually played he played a darn good game.
credit to him. Yeah.
But I feel horrible for him because again, it's literally a situation where he has to try to contest the ball and the only thing he can think of is to try to spoil it with his fist and he just Toby Bedford's just
It's
faster.
completely.
Yep.
Yeah, and like
Completely an accident, but he's going
that
to get weeks
happens.
for it. Yep.
That'll happen to defenders at least 4 times a game,
Hmm.
just whether or not you've got that cover
Yep.
behind you. Obviously, he didn't. And again, like I don't know. Did he expect? I can't remember the footage. Did Toby Bedford jump
Yeah, Toby
or
Bedford jumps and taps it past him because it's a bouncing footy, so it's not like a free kick where it was a chance for a mark. But you could tell Lewis is going in to just try to spoil it back away from his goal. Toby Bedford's running full speed. Toby jumps and taps the ball so he doesn't get possession, hoping that maybe Melican tackles him and gets with holding without the ball call, which again, that's smart play. And what basically happens is that as the ball is being tipped, you can see the moment he realizes there's nothing that's going to happen except for he's going to tag Toby in the face. And he hits it. Toby falls back, and you can
yeah,
see Melican stomps, turns around, and he puts his hands up. You can tell he knew exactly what was going to happen. Like I said, it was just one of those bigger defender, small, quick forward. It's a no-win situation for Lewis Melican because if he stops, Bedford gets the ball, most likely has a shot on goal, and Melican has to hope that he can get a deflection for a touched behind if it gets
just
by him.
not to. Yeah,
And if he does what he does to try to contest the footy, then the issue he has is that then the ball gets tapped over to his man who's behind him. So it's again, I felt bad for Lewis. Again, he's going to get weeks. It stinks, but I understand. I just don't like the people that are like, he should get 4 or 5 weeks for this. It's not a strike. It's more of a I'm running with a fold out fist and his face just happens to hit my fist. but the blurred vision by Toby Bedford is not a good look. The good thing is Toby wasn't concussed, as far as I am aware, so maybe that might keep it to three. But I'm worried it's going to be three, and it stinks for Lewis. But again, it's the way that when you when you punish because of result instead of action, I think you get situations like this. It's like the Paul Curtis one. Like I don't think it should have been three. I think it should have been one. Don't do
Yeah.
that. Try not to do that. It's going to happen, but only give him 1 week. The 3 weeks was kind of absolute crap. But again, come see, come saw. We'll discuss that just a little bit in the burning questions here. So that is it. That is all 9 games. It's so much fun to have you have a little bit of a different view on it a little bit too, and I absolutely love it. So we'll jump to the burning questions, and we kind of discussed it a little bit. Were you a little disappointed when you saw Essendon North, Fremantle St Kilda as Thursday and Friday night footy because they the AFL screams that we want to have we want to have marquee games for our prime time, and the fixture people didn't really give us that this week.
Uh, yeah, look, I mean, the reality is like, yeah, North hasn't performed or hasn't played finals for the past few years. Essendon, neither, but you can't just week in, week out not give them prime time.
Yep, I agree.
They have to, and you can't give them prime time against a team that might smoke them.
Hmm.
So in reality, it's like, and honestly, like obviously Essendon North turned out to be good.
Hmm.
Sometimes, yeah, just because they may at the moment not be in contention for finals doesn't mean you're not going to get a good game out of the teams.
I agree.
Um, yeah, as I said, like North fans would be fuming if they got the late afternoon Sunday game every week. They'd be pissed, as would we if that was the same situation with the Swans. So look, it just happens. It
Hmm.
happens. You don't know how teams prepare, like how teams go into each game. Obviously, fixtures after what round 14 haven't been confirmed yet, so that
Hmm.
might be a little bit more or we might get better games in prime time for that. But in terms of what we've, seven AFL and all that sort of stuff had to make these fixtures before, while teams were still in preseason, so they didn't fully know what to expect. And, you probably want two teams that are closer together on the ladder playing at prime time than, as a
Yep.
if you're a North Melbourne fan, going up against a Brisbane Lions on prime time. You're like, well, I'm not going to watch it anyways because there's a chance like we're going to get smoked,
Hmm.
sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the other ones didn't turn out so favorably, but that was just a team not showing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it's,
it just happens. It just happens. And
yeah.
as a footy nation, you've just got to kind of accept that your team's not always going to get prime time, but also your team can't never have prime time.
Hmm.
That's just how it's got to be. It's got to be fair in some aspect.
Yep. No, I get it. But it is one of those where it was like, I agree with you. Like the Essendon North game was quite entertaining. I got up taking it with a grain of salt. I was like, I'm interested to see how this goes, and was pleasantly surprised. It was Fremantle St Kilda to the point where I was so bored I was messaging my friends in Australia to entertain myself because it was like this game is over and it's the middle of the
Yeah.
second quarter. I was reaching out to some of my friends in the Samful and Waffle because the Samful State women's game between those two. So I was literally doing anything in my to entertain myself because I just couldn't. I was listening. It wasn't like I wasn't paying attention, but it wasn't entertaining me. So that was a fun one. So and then I want to get a little bit of a different perspective because I know that the Matrix is relatively similar in the W as it is in the AFL. So as a player in the W competition, is the MRO suspension matrix a bit confusing because in one play, as we kind of discussed with Paul Curtis, it should have been only one. It's three. Is it seem confusing because I know as fans they really have to fix it because it's just so confusing when you don't know, especially when they rule off of result instead of action.
Yeah, which look, I'm going to tell you, like, I'm very fortunate to have won in what going into my seventh season. I've only given away five free kicks in 40 however many games I've played. Like I've that's how many I've given away. Um, until I just don't really understand the process of it. Obviously, I found out a little bit about it when my teammate Maddie Collier got suspended last year
Hmm.
um, for a hit. And look, yeah, obviously the AFL is sort of taking it from approach of how, like, the result of how that player pulls up.
Hmm.
Obviously, like, if you had, and I don't, I don't mean to do this to him, but if you had Paddy McCartan in all of those situations, it's probably always going to end up the same with Paddy McCartan.
Hmm.
Like just how badly he got, or Angus Brayshaw. Like, everyone's brain is obviously different in terms of concussion point of view, but obviously the AFL is trying to protect players. And it's again, it's super difficult for the AFL to even just come up with a system that is consistent
Hmm.
because there's just so many different things that you have to weigh up, and it's like, well, where do you get it right? They could change it and try and to what they think is probably more consistent, and then something happens on game day and then it's just like, well, that didn't work either. Like
Hmm.
I like personally, I am nowhere near as experienced of a person to be able to tweak it in any way. But I don't know, maybe the rules need to be a little bit looser in terms of okay, this person is way more prone to concussions. And, you know, if we talk about Lewis Melican's incident on the weekend, like he's not assessing who he's going up against. He sees a person in an orange jumper and he knows he's got to make an impact. It's not like he's targeting someone because they're more prone to concussions or not. Like, yeah, like I think it's just a player against player, and that's what it has to be seen as to an example. But also, like, if I'm on the receiving end of it and and I'm in a pretty bad state, like I'd also hate for it to be let off.
Hmm.
So I don't know, like it's not probably an answer you're hoping for, but like I
It's
just
it's perfect.
what I
Go
don't
ahead.
know if you ever get an answer that's good.
Well, here's the way I say it. And there's only one thing I'm going to push back on, and this is just personally for me. I don't think the AFL is doing it for the betterment of the players. Honestly, I think they're trying to do it because they don't want to get sued in the next 15 years from somebody getting multiple concussions. Like, I don't mean to be that rude, but that's just the honest to God truth. They're going through these class action lawsuits because of all of the things that happened in the early 80s. And again, the game is completely different. But I'm sitting here looking at somebody like you who's disappeared to go get something, which is I find fascinating.
Just what
It's
like
fine. It's fine.
that's
It's a fun blooper for the podcast for sure. But for me, it's like I look at somebody like you, BT, and I go like, I think in the next 10 years, it's almost going to come down to they're just going to have players sign waivers saying, "Hey, I know I could get hurt and I'm just not, I can't sue." And they're literally going to write NDAs to where they can't do it because it's the only way to get by without just causing all sorts of drama. Again, they're doing these suspensions off results, which they can't do. They need to do it off actions. If you do it off actions, it's going to teach a lot better than I hit somebody in the head. Okay, I just have to pray to God they don't get concussed. Like, that's not the way the players should be handling this. Like, they should know, oh no, I can't do that, and be
oh
able to understand it before anything even happens. So, and again, I know it's split second. Some of this stuff is just completely out of the Lewis Melican one is perfect in this situation. He's going for the footy, a quick little forward just happens to get in the way. Whoopsie, that's what happens. But it is very frustrating for me that I see like it just feels like the AFL is just trying they're flying by the seat of their pants just trying to keep themselves from getting sued. And I think that's the frustrating part. They're not making valuable change to protect players like yourself. They're not protecting you. They're protecting their own butts. And I hate saying that, but that's the way it comes off. Like they're only doing this so then they don't get sued in the future. And that's very frustrating personally because if they make just the tiniest tweaks, like don't make it about the result, make it about the action, I think things will change for the better. But it's this weird, absolute frustrating. Well, if he gets concussed, then it's 3 weeks. If he doesn't, you're okay. Very frustrating. So, and maybe it's
Yeah.
just the fan. Maybe it's just the fan in me. And again, I don't want players to change how they're playing because the bravery of some of these players, again, is awe-inspiring. It's fantastic, but it does lead to the susceptibility of getting injured. So I get that. So we'll reel away from that because I know if somebody at the AFL hears that, I know they may not take my take very lightly, but I really don't care because I think they need to be told the truth from a fan's perspective. So let's jump to it. Let's talk about our beloved Sydney Swans, not only as a player, but you're a Swans fan at heart. Uh, has the Swans, with this win over the Giants, turned their season around, or will another win convince you the Swans are on the rebound?
Let me walk into the club tomorrow and I'll tell you after that. Honestly, like I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Even as someone who sees these guys on almost a, second daily basis sort of thing, you just don't know. I don't know, like, and even like bumping into Coxie so often, you can't tell. It's like us sitting here talking about Carlton
Hmm.
and Frio and stuff like that. Like, I mean, obviously, I hope so. I know these guys have the intent, and I know that they have that their heart is in it, and they'll go in there and give it everything. Like, there's no these guys aren't backing out of the football because half of their playing list is on the injury list. Like, no,
Hmm.
it's not that at all. It's it's in no way isn't an excuse, but you've had horse at the reins, literally, for gosh, how long now? 2011, 2010, something like that. So like
Yep,
a decade
2000, yep,
and a half,
2011,
basically,
yep. So,
a decade and a half of this guy being like, his style, how he coaches. And yeah, Coxie's been there as the forwards coach since since I've been at the club. Like, he's been there for a long time. So obviously he knows about the Bloods culture. He knows about what footy is, but he also, like, he shoved those boys into two 2K time trials. I
mhm.
hope I don't have that next week. But because we start preseason next week. But um, he has a whole different idea of what training is and what his version of Bloods football, and it does take more than a year sometimes to fully adjust that. Like, Horse handed over to Coxie in like November, or no, was it like even in like December or something like that? Like,
Hmm.
John Longmire was still coaching that side at the start when they first got into the club there like in November when I got back from the pool. He was still at the reins. So they haven't had a lot of time to figure it out. No, it's not an excuse. But yeah, like I hope so, and I think that this win will have done them a lot of good
Hmm.
because sitting there watching that and watching since I first picked up an AFL footy at like the age of 10, um, you've seen a very similar style of Bloods culture within these guys and girls. Um, and I feel like I saw that on the weekend
Hmm.
as a fan
Yep.
of this club. I feel like I saw that on the weekend, and I think they felt that too.
Hmm. Now, from a fan that has no involvement from the club, this is how I see it. I think all of your rationale is perfectly fine. The injury list, the change in coaches. But what I saw this weekend was exactly what you said. More of that Bloods footy that we saw in 2021, that rabid forward pressure, the great tackle pressure. Caden Cleary, fantastic game. He's been so much fun to watch. No Tommy Papley, but Caden Cleary has brought that tackle pressure. You're seeing guys step up and just do what they need to do. As we said with Aaron Francis and Joel Hamling, are they the greatest forwards in the world? Absolutely not. But did they do what they needed to do? Absolutely. You're seeing Warner and Heaney back to their superpowers. You're seeing Tommy McCartan finally settled at fullback and be able to do what he needs to do. Seeing Nick Blakey do his usual runs, including cracking a goal in this particular game. I think we've found it. And the scary part is that Cal Mills is still to come back, Earl Goulden's still to come back, Papley's still to come back, Taylor Adams is still to come back. There's some veteran experience still to come back into this team, but you've built depth. Handling, he can handle it. Has he been the greatest? Absolutely not. Pete Ladhams, despite being omitted for this game, I didn't think he did a bad job. Yes, he had a couple of clangers. I will give that, but that's him. Ladhams is a very, very, very mercurial individual, but he's fun to watch at times. Brody Grundy is starting to get into his groove. I think he's starting to do what Brody Grundy did during his time at Collingwood, which is so much fun. Um, you're starting to see everything click. And I think Dean Cox, it's taken a little bit of time. They're a little bit like a diesel engine. You took a little bit to get started, but I think once this group gets started, there's a lot of good that I can see. I'm positive. I'm positive. I still think that there's just a few things they need to shore up. Our kicking skills just need this tiny bit, but it was much better this weekend. They were finding the corridor, they were hitting the short kicks, they were definitely using that. And just shore up a little bit defensively. As the defender that you are, I know that just a little bit more sure defensively. There's a couple of times there's too many guys going for pack marks and leaving guys down on the deck for crumbs. That I want just the littlest bit fixed up. But other than that, I see a lot of positives. I'm 100% with you. So I'm excited going into this Essendon game again. Fearful because Essendon has some firepower, so we'll have to see how that goes. Does the padlock James Jordan get Zach Merritt? Will be interesting to see. Do they go that? And I want to say this personally: how good is James Rowbottom as a captain? How good is James Rowbottom as a captain? The next time you see him at the club, give him a fist bump for me because I have loved watching Jamesy Rowbottom. He's so much fun. I love the hell out of that guy. I said online this week, I said if Cal Mills had to step down and no longer be the captain, Rowbottom would be my first choice because he does everything that you need to do out of a captain. So next time you see him at the club, give him a fist bump from a fan because I love that kid.
Will do.
Absolutely love James E. Rowbottom to death. So, all right, we will move on in the podcast to the team of the week, which for me is a lot of fun. It gives me a little bit of homework, but I thoroughly enjoy this, and I'm fascinated to hear what you think on this, Brianna. We will start off as with the defenders. As a coach that I am, we'll start with the defenders. On the fullback line, we see Cal Wilkie of the St. Kilda Saints, absolutely fantastic for the Saints this weekend. Mac Andrew from the Gold Coast, you kick a goal as a defender, gotta give you a little bit of love. And James Sicily from the Hawthorn Hawks in the fullback line. On the halfback line, we see Dan Houston of the Collingwood Magpies, Caleb Windsor of the Melbourne Demons, and the Lizard Nick Blakey of the Sydney Swans along the halfback line. Through the center on the wings, we have Elijah Hewitt of the West Coast Eagles and Massimo D'Ambrosio of the Hawthorn Hawks on the wings. In the center, we see Ruckman Tim English kicking 3 goals as a Ruckman. Good job there, Timmy. Great to see. Through the center midfield, we have Jordan Dawson of the Adelaide Crows, the Marcus Bontempelli of the Western Bulldogs, and Isaac Rankin of the Adelaide Crows in the center. On the forward line, we see Cooper Sharman of the St. Kilda Saints. That goal from the boundary was ridiculous. Um, Disco Daniel Turner from the Melbourne Demons and the ever aging, ever wondrous Jack Gunston of the Hawthorn Hawks on the half forward line. The full forward line, we have Aaron Naughton of the Western Bulldogs, Brody Majacek from the Collingwood Magpies, and great to see this man back, Charlie Cameron of the Brisbane Lions on the full forward line. On the bench, we have defender Josh Weddle, ruckman Max Gawn, midfielder Patrick Cripps, and the forward was Jake Waterman of the West Coast Eagles. I know that's a lot of names really quickly. Thoughts on team of the week?
Yeah, pretty well rounded. Only one, like, where do you fit him in? But where James Jordan,
The,
that guy, what he kicked to himself
he
while
kicked to himself
tagging.
while tagging Whitfield. Whitfield had a little bit more impact than he has in a couple of the games, but the fact that James E. Jordan kicked 2 goals kind of balanced that out. The thing is that James E. Jordan was technically classified as a forward, and with my forwards, I go most goals. And everybody that I put in ahead of him had at least 3 goals. Jamesy only had 2. So if I had a sneak in guy, James would have been that because it was fantastic. Like I said, kicking 2 goals as a tagger is pretty impressive. So
I just he is the epitome of someone that just plays his role. Like you don't he not to say he doesn't have flair, but he checks his boxes every single week.
I will say this, that Sydney is very blessed for both teams because you have James Jordan on the men and Tanya Kennedy and Tanya Kennedy in the women. Like those two are so similar. They don't say much, but they
Yeah,
just do their job and they do it so damn well. So
yeah.
so Sydney
I'm
is
just glad
very
Mel
blessed with our taggers.
AJ. Yeah, yeah. Nah, nah.
There's another one. Next time you see Tanya Kennedy, give her a fist bump for me. I absolutely love watching her play. It is fantastic
She's
seeing her
funny.
play.
She's an air. She's so funny.
All right, we'll go to the power rankings again. My ode to the fourth and long part of the podcast, the origination of the podcast. And we start off again. I go with form. So the last 5 games. So this is going to kind of do this. At 5, the Western Bulldogs. At number 4, the Essendon Bombers. At 3, the Collingwood Magpies. 2, Geelong. And at 1, top of the table, the Brisbane Lions. So that is my power rankings. That is through that. I know we're still early in the week, but humor me, BT. Let's tip. Let's tip our games for this weekend. I know, again, injury lists and all that. I understand, but let's have some fun. Let's tip this round of footy. Let's see how good you go here. First game of the round, Thursday night footy out at Optus Stadium. An interesting one. Fremantle licking their wounds, taking on the Collingwood Magpies. Who do you like in this one?
Mm, I want to. I'm actually finding this one tough because I dare say that Longmuir will be getting Fremantle on the absolute chains this week. Um, but Collingwood, I think Collingwood's just ruthless at the moment.
Yeah, I'm going to tip the Pies in this one, but again, being out west, sometimes the Western Australian teams can find a way to make it a fortress. I like the firepower Collingwood has in this one, but I think this is going to be a little bit more competitive than the game against St. Kilda. At least crossing my fingers, it really is. So interesting one. St. Kilda get another Friday night footy as they take on the Carlton Blues at the MCG. Fascinating one here. I'm gonna go for the upset. I'm gonna tip St. Kilda. I'm thinking that the energy sap that was the Adelaide Crows knocking off, I think is going to shake them a little bit. St. Kilda, I like their ball movement. Nasai Wangani Miller has been fantastic off the halfback line. If they can get and use that big ground and use the space with their kicking ability, I think they can give Carlton trouble. Plus, Rowan Marshall, I think, is one of those rucks that I think he's just begging to have a breakout game. And I think this could be that opportunity against TDK. I'm tipping the Saints to knock off the Blues in this one.
Yeah, look, and honestly, I've just gone back and looked at who the Saints have played recently, and their last like 4 or 5 games have been against teams that are currently like sitting in the top 8.
Mhm.
I was initially going to tip Carlton, um, based on the fact that they are pretty lethal when they're on, but I think I'm on your side with St Kilda, considering who they've played against. I know they kind of got flogged, but um, I think positive signs. I just hope that they don't get too comfortable with their win on the weekend.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. St. Kilda is going to be a fascinating. Again, they want space, speed on ball, and all that. Carlton want that tough, competitive footy. Who can initiate their will on the other? I think we'll go a long way on this one. Fascinating one for me on this one. Melbourne v Hawthorn, MCG, Saturday afternoon footy. Interesting one. Who do you like in this one?
Pop forward. I know, like, I think Melbourne will actually show some of their good football from the weekend. I think what they have shown is it's, you know, yeah, they might get flogged a little bit, but they still show their game style. I think they'll put up a fight, but I still think Hawthorn. The fact that Jack Ginnivan was playing in like the subs, and in like the reserves, and like that's their depth is, even though he was injured,
Mhm.
um, is impressive. I think Hawthorn will have that one, but probably going to root for Melbourne.
That connection to Melbourne is still strong. I love it.
Of
No,
course, of course. They've done a
I'm
lot for me. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
I agree. I'm gonna tip Hawthorn, but this is one. If you tell me, like, if you forced me to pick one upset during the round, this might be it because the matchup amongst the rucks, this is where Max Gone sometimes can have fun. Lloydie Meek is a big, tough, strong ruckman. This is the fun one. I want to see how Max Gone responds against a bigger bodied, little bit younger ruckman, because if you look at it, the bigger bodies through the midfield of Viney, Petrarca, and Oliver should have a field day against this smaller, quicker, besides Jai Newcomb, midfield of the Hawthorn Hawks, which first ball, you would think that would help out Melbourne. But the defensive Josh Battle, the defensive Tommy of Barras, I think will help. Hawks win this one, but Melbourne's a sneaky chance. I think Melbourne's in this a little bit more than some of the experts are thinking. So gonna tip Hawthorn, but I think Melbourne's got a good shot in this one. Fun one, Marvel Stadium under the lid. Fascinating one in this one. Essendon v the Sydney Swans. I'm gonna tip the Swans in this one, and normally I don't in these type of games because I'm not always confident in this one because they're coming off a win. It's great, but they're going to be without Lewis Melican most likely. So does Joel Hamling go back? How will they defensively structure on this one? I can't wait for Brody Grundy versus Todd Goldstein because I think this could be a game that Grundy could have some fun. And I think the midfield for Sydney is just a little bit too good, especially with Warner playing better. But this terrifies me because this is an Essendon team on their day, can be very, 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 very lethal offensively. And that's been the Swans' a little bit Achilles heel this year is giving up too many points. Tipping the Swans, Essendon scare me though.
Yeah, I mean, look, Swans have had pretty good recent track record at Melbourne from memory.
They
They
like
got them.
playing under them. They like playing at Marvel. That's where they beat
Yeah,
North
they do
Melbourne.
well.
Oh,
So yeah, I don't know what they do with Joel Hamling. Like I know obviously they had him and that up there to take away Sam Taylor's football, but look, I can't say I know, and I couldn't tell you even if I did. But
hmm,
yeah, I don't know. Tough one.
I
I
agree.
think I think Sydney's mature enough to like what they played on the weekend and want to replicate it.
Yep. No, I agree. But that's going to be a fun one. This is an interesting one. I'm seriously,
Yeah.
seriously looking forward to this
It's a
next one.
footy.
Gold Coast, Western Bulldogs, TIO Stadium in Darwin. Gold Coast is deadly up in Darwin. Who do you like?
Also, they're more accustomed to the heat.
Yep.
If like training in Queensland is so difficult because it is just heat, straight heat. Um, but the dogs have been good. I know. I'm tipping the Suns.
I'm gonna tip the Suns too because of Darwin. Like if this was being played in Melbourne, I'd tip the Doggies. But because this is being played in Darwin, that's why I'm gonna go Suns. Because as I agree with you, the Suns are a lot more used to that Queensland, the humidity, the heat. Plus, they have such a great record at Darwin. They really have made it a second home. So tipping the Suns in this one just because of location. Another one, I hate this because both these games are on at similar times. That one, and then the next one of my favorites,
Showdown.
the showdown, Port Adelaide, Adelaide. I'm going to say this. I am tipping Adelaide in this one, but I really should tip Port because normally the favorite in this game loses.
Yeah.
The last three favorites, the last three times these teams have played, the favorite has lost.
Yeah, I don't
And the favorite is Adelaide right now. It's closer. I
know.
think everybody sees again. I agree. It's a lot like any of the derbies, the Q Clash, the Western Derby, this one, Collingwood, Essendon, Collingwood, Carlton. It doesn't matter where they are on the ladder. It's going to be a competitive game, no matter what the records are.
Yeah, a bit of beef. God, yeah, it is tough. I think I'm gonna break it. I think I'm just gonna go for Port Adelaide just for not even shits and gigs. I just think that they've got a chance, actually.
I agree. I agree.
Think it's
It's
one of those times like, yeah, they haven't been playing their greatest recently, but you show up when you're playing a showdown.
Yep, I agree. I may two screen that night. I may intentionally make sure and stay up after the Swans game and double screen this to keep track of both because that's going to be too good to miss both. Because
Get your wife awake.
I pretty. I'm just trying to keep her asleep the whole time. So, all right, we'll jump to MCG. A fascinating one. Richmond v. the West Coast at the MCG. Richmond, too many green shoots for me. I'm liking how they're playing a little bit more than West Coast, even though West Coast was more competitive this weekend. The long travel from WA, I like the Tigers in this one.
Yeah. I like the Tigers too, but I think that this is potentially West Coast week to get a win.
I agree. I agree with that. I completely
So
agree.
I'm gonna tip them on those
Okie
regards.
dokie. All right, GMHBA Stadium. This one took a little bit of a hit for me.
Ooh,
The loss to the Swans, I think, kind of brings this one to make it a little bit easier to tip. A couple weeks ago, this would have been a very difficult game to tip. Cats, Giants. I have the Cats. They play GMHBA Stadium really well. Giants, they're struggling. Their form has absolutely disappeared from the start of the season. Cats playing super good footy. My only worry is coming off a tough game of footy against Collingwood and getting a win. Sometimes you have a letdown, so that could let the Giants in. But the Cats at home, so good. I like the Cats in this one.
I actually like the Giants on this one, only because the last two or three times the Giants have played at
GMHBA,
GMHBA Stadium, they've
they've
actually
won.
beat Geelong.
Yep.
So there might be a few of those Sunday scaries potentially for
Hmm.
Geelong.
Nope, I can see it.
Um, yeah, and then I don't know, I just like there'll be a bit of that. I mean, look, what they played on Saturday, they're getting about an 8-day turnaround. So I don't think fatigue will be much of a problem in terms
Nah.
of playing a tough game. Um, but yeah, I mean, look, Giants don't have Toby Bedford, which means they lose a lot of flair up forward, potentially, depending on how he's going. But yeah, I think I'm going for the Giants.
That's I completely understand that one. I almost did myself. Like I said, the Cats at home, I they usually play really well at home again. Giants are one of the few
Also,
bogey
just splitting the
teams.
tips up. So
It's fine. I don't mind. This next one, unfortunately, I'm not sure how much splitting there'll be. Is Ninja
uh,
Stadium down in Hobart sees the end of the round with North Melbourne hosting Brisbane. Damn it, North Melbourne, give us a competitive match. That's all I ask. Tipping Brisbane, but hoping North gives us a competitive match. Maybe a scare out of Brisbane coming off that game against Gold Coast. Maybe you see a little bit of Brisbane taking North for granted. Crossing my fingers that happens. I just wanted a competitive game, damn it. Brisbane did win it, but hoping North compete.
I think North will show fight. I just think they'll run out of gas against Brisbane,
Yep.
to be honest.
Even down in Tassie. So it's just interesting. Ninja Stadium. It's
Yeah.
weird to say.
Ninja
Ninja
Stadium, yeah, I
Stadium down in
know.
Hobart. Yeah. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for this particular podcast. BT, it is great to see you again. Wish you the best of luck in the start of your preseason again. You and I go
Kind of
back
needed.
and forth you and I going back and forth most of the season again. I cannot wait. We had a fun little chat before this happened. We were talking everything, including the newest edition, Zippy Fish. I cannot wait to see her in red and white. I think it's going to be fantastic for the Swans. Chloe Malloy should be back from her ACL injury. I cannot wait for her to be back. I'm super excited for this AFLW season. I know I'm only 7 rounds into the men, but I cannot wait for the women to get started. I think it is going to be fantastic. So, best of luck to you. Hoping for another fantastic season from you this year.
Thank you so much. Yeah, gonna need all the luck I can get for week one of preseason, but it's only getting closer.
Yep. So,
Round
so
one.
much fun. Cannot wait. So, that is going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. And we'll be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.